incident was about to take place that would shake the foundations of the civilized world.
It is time to open your mind. Time to discover your divine self as we navigate this holographic matrix together. Strap in, cosmic family, as we slide through this wormhole of cosmic information together in search of the truth.
You can't handle the truth.
It's time to go inside the matrix. With your host, Jimmy Brent.
All right, welcome everybody to Inside the Matrix. We hope that you are all doing well in spite of continuation of craziness in our world. Today we're welcoming back two of our guests that have been on a couple of times before, and we always enjoy their presence. So I'd like to welcome back James True and Benjamin Balderson. Welcome,
Pleasure
guys.
to be here, Jimmy.
All right.
We absolutely love coming on with you. It's we couldn't be more excited.
Great. Awesome. Well, I think we'll just chime in here whenever you guys want. James, don't forget to unmute there. I think you're still with us.
Man, I'm such an amateur. Yeah. I was just
amateur.
It's good to have the band back together.
It sure is, man. We're gonna jam today.
Yeah, sure. So, despite
anyway,
microphone
we're just seeing a continuation of more crazy. We go from one crazy scenario to now a new crazy scenario. I don't even know what to say almost, because it's just such severe mind control programming, and a lot of people are falling for it, and it's just kind of sad to see. You guys throw in your 2 cents. Let's shed some light on this thing.
Wow, it's what's shocking me the most is the almost flawless transition that we could go from something that everybody was starting to recognize that really, I mean, is this really what is needed? Do we need to be ending our entire lives for something that nobody seems to have gotten? Everybody, even the ones who are just diehard, we're really starting to calm down with it. And for the world to not see the completely smooth transition into the race war, that I'm just in shock.
I think you nailed it. Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, it's actually even above the race war is the fact that anyone who owns a big box store that's been forced to be closed down for months and has laid off their employees and realizes that the economy is now going to be crippled forever would benefit tremendously by having a crate of bricks delivered right outside the door to their shop and left there for the public to grab and use to break their windows and set fire to their AutoZone. I think that we are forgetting that there is a strong incentive out there in all these cities to collect on insurance money from fire, vandalism. That's very real. And people that own, there are people clinking glasses when they watch, what's going down in Minneapolis and things like that. They're like, we're going to get paid. This is fantastic, which just continues the pillage, right? It's always that's their safety in numbers, right? If you're going to attack Rock Ridge, you're gonna hire all the bandits, and they don't need no stinking badges, right? You're gonna have a giant horde of them, correct? That's their safety in that, and that's what you're seeing now, but on the business end, because this had nothing to do with a virus. This is how you sell an economy. You bring it to its knees so it's worthless, and then you sell it to the IMF for what, 5 trillion or 51? I think it's 51 trillion. However much it was, IMF gave me. Sorry, I don't have that number with us, but whatever amount that was that they gave us in the middle of COVID, that's really what was happening. And this had to happen because we've been living lies on top of lies on top of lies when it comes to banking and our finances and the petrodollar itself. So all of this is it's not like any of this was a surprise. This is just what it looks like. And overall, it's actually not the worst way for it to go down. This could have gone down a lot worse. So there's some silver lining here, believe it or not.
And how about the segue, Ben, what do you think about the segue of, okay, we're all wearing masks for, well, some of us, not me, wearing masks for this COVID thing. And all of a sudden we segue into wearing masks for the mass rioting.
This is just amazing. I mean, let's start out with that the riots basically started in Minneapolis.
Mm-hmm.
So when it transitioned from protest to riot, they actually, the very first person that broke a window was a police officer.
Yeah.
There's a whole bunch of people around Minneapolis that immediately said, we know that guy. And it got called out. He was walking around with not just a N95 mask or a cloth mask. He's walking around with the Breaking Bad full, true gas mask.
Right. Like, and an umbrella.
Yeah,
and a hammer.
Umbrella. Yeah, just very, very odd. And so there's agent provocateurs everywhere, and to think that they don't want this, and then they're out as they're saying, oh well, look, we need martial law. One of the big stories that I saw against the rioters was a black firefighter who had used his life savings to buy a bar in downtown Minneapolis, and now it's all lost. If that shit wasn't lost to begin with, after 3 months of this is a bar. This is one of the businesses that got shut down first. And so his business for 3 months, paying downtown Minneapolis rent for 3 months, he was already going under. That insurance check he's getting saved his life. And wouldn't even surprise me if they didn't already have that story loaded up on how he was going under because of COVID. And then the riot happened. Like, well, let's just keep it on and we'll just switch it to the riot.
Oh, so
never miss the opportunity to take advantage of some suffering, right?
Yeah, and I saw a picture today on somebody posted on Facebook of, I believe it was the Minnesota Attorney General holding an Antifa book.
Wow.
Wow, this is kind of telling here.
Well, we turned everybody into Antifa because we asked them all to wear a mask. So we installed the anonymous feeling. We installed the feeling of I can't breathe. We've been doing that since the first I can't breathe. This was several years ago. There was the last BLM protest stemming from a shooting it's the same mantra as Charlottesville. Charlottesville was a construction site. That entire thing was constructed. They built a promenade for the rioters to run down this thin barricaded like cattle, basically, between the one side and the other side. So all of these things are being encouraged and profited off of. Again, this is a big pillage. This is going to be an interesting summer. It's for sure. So
yeah, and we saw that with this supposed CARES Act, they pumped over $2 trillion into the banks and corporations out of this thing and gave the $1,200 checks a mere pittance to other people. Just unbelievable how they, as politicians love to say, just never let a bad situation go to waste when it comes to taking advantage. While people aren't really paying that much attention anyway, they pay less attention during a so-called crisis, and then they just immediately reward themselves with a couple $1 trillion. It's just unbelievable.
Well, yeah, but that's how you don't show up to a pillage and start asking permission. Hey, you don't mind if I rape your daughter, do you? Not how a pillage goes. You're gonna. This is what it's about. We've all false flags have been pillages, and I'm talking the global ones. This isn't even like out of the ordinary if you think about it. Certainly it's big, but it's a multinational play, and it's gonna reverberate for several years, just like 9/11 did. This will, just like 9/11 enabled a blank check for Zionism to trample onto any Afghanistan, Iraq, Libya, anything that was granted. We will have the same blank check when it comes to the terrorism, the new terrorism, the germ terrorism, and that's really what's opening it all up. And all of us, by taking a COVID check, all of us by being sick, all the celebrities saying they had it first, they're giving you a dopamine bump to say that you survived COVID. In fact, anyone who dies of COVID, there's like a special memorial where everyone's going to give them more prana for that if you can prove that it was a COVID thing. People are coming out of it like a fashion statement. Oh yeah, I had COVID last fall. It's meanwhile, there's not even a gold standard for testing. 80% of these tests are false positive, and then additional, the ones that are positive are actually simply telling you that there are exosomes in the system.
Exactly.
So if we're willing to buy that, we are certainly willing to buy that. The reason why we're having all these riots is because the people themselves on the street cannot be trusted. Therefore, we need more government, we need more military, we need National Guard to come in and save us from ourselves. And that's what's going to be happening around the cities, around America. This is the Yellow Vest protest being installed in America right now. And it's up to us to determine, are we going to fall for it or are we not? And I'm seeing some good signs, actually, that we're not. There's some really good signs that we're not. I do realize that AutoZone is burning. I do realize that Target is melted. But also there's video in Texas of a guy filming, hey, why'd you guys put all these bricks out here? Like, you had a giant truckload of bricks dropped off, and there's not a construction barrier around. It's just a free pile of bricks dropped here 3 days ago. Why? And here's the center of the riots. And so here's a rioteer basically saying, we know what you're up to. That's huge.
Yeah.
That's huge. That's a huge sign that people are enlightening themselves, raising their aperture and seeing the truth of what's around them and choosing wisely. It's a fantastic sign. Rome is definitely burning, don't get me wrong, but a lot of people are roasting some good marshmallows over this. We're finding ways to really be positive about it in really good ways. A lot of us are rethinking schools. It's a blessing to see these terrifying images where they're showing you, well, here's what school's going to look like with all the tape on the floor and everything covered in plastic, and all the new rules the CDC suggesting about play and no lunch outside the classroom. Always the same teacher to limit the spread of viruses. No recess. This is fantastic because it's making people go, that's wrong. I'm going to need to solve education. We need a different solution. And the sooner we have a different solution to education, the sooner we raise people that stop falling for stuff like this.
Right.
Buying into it, So these are gifts of all. These are things that could definitely lead to the best apocalypse ever if we play our cards right.
I agree, and I really see that major traumas like 9/11, they're continuing along those lines. So what that does is trauma across an entire society. It creates an opening for mass hypnosis because people are in a state of fear, they're in a state of confusion. They're not typically, unless they're they've raised their consciousness, they really are in that state where they can be easily hypnotized into accepting the Hegelian dialectic operation that's going on. I totally agree with you on that. It's just interesting that as the COVID system was winding down because more people were seeing through it, more people were coming on and talking about it on YouTube and Facebook and saying, hey, these hospitals are closing. There's nobody there. This thing is really become a hoax, and bam, they didn't want that to complete itself, so that we had to have this new thing. And it's just, I think we're going to have it at least until November, until the elections. But maybe this just will never end until people just finally have had enough. What do you think, Ben?
So what really concerns me is with what you were just saying, with the COVID, basically the only people that were diehard with it was the medical community, which that is the field that they eat out of. So of course they're not going to go taint it. And the extreme liberals, that the extreme college educated, that was the only people that were very diehard about it. And the only thing I ever saw against the people was they would go, oh, well, the only people against that are saying go against the COVID is the Trump supporters and the conspiracy theorists and these people. And it just started getting more and more. So this was something that covered everybody. And as the country as a whole started coming back together and saying, oh, the government is wrong with this. And it didn't matter who you were. Now, with what they've switched this to is they turned around and of course the focus on the picture of the sacrificed gentleman was the white cop kneeling on a black man's neck. And he's staring deadpan at the camera for 8 minutes while people are showing this to the world. Supposedly he's dead for a couple minutes, and this cop's just like, yeah, I don't care. Everybody just record me being a badass. Yeah, this is just insane. So now what we've got, the narrative is switched to is from everybody against COVID, except for the medical community, to black men are being killed by police, and you start seeing things like people screaming, when do you see a white man killed by police? Blah, blah, blah. And it's turned into an entire black-white thing, which now gets us fighting each other again, the divide and conquer. And that just came in so smoothly. When the fact is the police kill approximately 1,000 people a year. Of that 1,000 people, 300 are black, approximately, 500 are white, approximately, and the other 200 are of the other mixed races and then unknown. Now, per capita of all the groups and all the races, I believe Native American comes out the worst in a per capita situation. And so people all of a sudden start wanting to argue about these things and then saying, oh, well, they only represent this much of the population and this many people. Listen, we're all Americans. Are you saying it's okay for the other races to be killed as long as it's in even numbers? Is that what you people are saying? So it's turned into this, we're fighting each other apparently about who's getting killed the most and how meaningful that is, rather than as a group saying, well, geez, I don't want cops killing any of us. I don't really care what color you are. Cops should not be killing American citizens. Unless you're standing there with a gun, being a threat, being an active physical threat, you should never receive violence. That's the only time violence should be allowed. The authorities are there to put handcuffs on you, take you to jail where a judge will decide and a jury will decide what you've done and what your punishment should be. He's not there to be the arbiter of justice. He's there to lock you up and go then receive justice. So the only time violence should ever come into play is it when the perpetrator is posing an extreme physical threat to the community or the officer in and of himself. Obviously, if he turns around and attacks him and he pulls a gun on him, that's a different situation.
Sure.
So this is all, and then you take into account that it's immediately known that it's the Minneapolis police again provoking the riots. It was a Minneapolis cop in on this. Even if you don't look for the conspiracy type, the Gnostic, with the black cube being there and all the other things, just understanding that the same people are doing all the same things. Why are we fighting with each other about it now? Why are we not going to the police and holding the government accountable? Why are you burning down businesses especially small businesses who just went for 3 months without being able to make money. And you're going to go destroy them, as far as most people know, even though I realize they're going to get an insurance check. Your average thinker doesn't.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to go fight them rather than take this right to the government, rather than take this right to the group that's making the laws. And furthermore, the cities where minority crime, police crime is the worst, where there's the most violence against minorities, are always Democrat-held cities. And the Democrats are out there screaming, this black on white violence needs to stop. It's the Republicans just don't care. Who cares if the Republicans care?
Right. It's your white supremacists doing it, right?
Right. Well, there's no white supremacists running Baltimore or running Minneapolis or running New York or any of that. The chief of police is typically, of the figures that you see up there, the mayor and the chief of police and the other figures, it's typically at least 50% black in any of those cities. Mm-hmm. So, and it's almost no Republicans. So how you're going to blame Republicans for this, I don't know. And then act like Republicans don't care. But then again, I grew up in a Republican state, so I'm not sure how all the farmers believe Republicans care about farmers, because they do the same thing. They give you a real nice lip service, blame everything on Democrats. Well, when's the last time a Democrat ran anything in South Dakota? Right. So I'm not sure how it's their fault.
Yeah, well, that's just the easy out for the controlled media. They're just gonna go the opposite direction of what anybody should be looking at, and just instantly lie their ass off, knowing that a whole bunch of people will still believe them no matter what they say.
Exactly. And exactly. And just before this, we had a united front. There wasn't politics involved in it. There wasn't race involved in it. There wasn't religion involved in it. There was the American people saying, the government's kind of full of shit on this, and we'd like to go back to living. Yeah. And now we've got the great divide amongst the people again, and it just happened just smooth. Wow.
And James, there were some interesting things that I saw too that I don't know if you heard about them, but that cop that was kneeling on the guy's neck, his wife was the brother or the sister of the Asian cop that was standing there watching the whole thing. And then they were saying that they talked with that cop's neighbors, and none of them knew that he was even a cop, and he'd lived there for years. I find that a bit strange.
Oh yeah, absolutely. It's really important that in order to start the riots, you need a flashpoint, and I personally believe that the whole thing doesn't smell right. And more importantly, I find that we keep making the same mistake, that we're taking these stories that we see at face value as being true. We right. automatically give it the assumption that it's true. But every single time this happens, it's always not true. And it would be great if we could approach the media, every story, as the default is it's not true.
Yeah, exactly.
And then
anyway, James, I hate to stop you there, but hold that thought. We're coming up against a break here, so we're going to take a short pause. And you're listening to Inside the Matrix with James True and Benjamin Balderson. We're going to take a short pause here, so stick around with us. If you have a question, pop it in the chat. I'll be happy to talk with you. All right, welcome back, everybody, to Inside the Matrix with our special guests, James True and Benjamin Balderson. On the break, we were kind of talking a little bit about the political climate now and the interesting tack that the mainstream media is taking about calling the perpetrators of the rioting all white supremacists. So that's a pretty interesting way of lying about it. Now, there probably are plenty of white instigators out there that are being paid, either Antifa or otherwise, by Soros and company, to incite people to do things maybe that they wouldn't normally even do to kind of escalate this. What do you guys think?
I have a hard time picturing media as being like in opposition to the president anymore. And I know that sounds backwards from what we're used to, but I look now more at what DC's doing, everything they're doing, as a wrestling match, as a professional wrestling match. And you need an opponent to oppose you in a very dramatic way. So you need someone like Biden who has a high dramatic charge to him that people really, really just despise him. You need him to play the creepy Joe role that brings him on stage, that keeps you addicted to the show. Same for Trump, same for Clinton, same for Hillary, same for all of them. And I believe that Jim Acosta and CNN is actually an arm of the government underneath Smith-Moon. Smith-Moon enables them to create propaganda to help the country. That's how it's worded.
That's true.
And they believe that if they had an engaging show, political show for everyone, like a reality show, they think that would actually help people for whatever reason. It's going to give them what it is that they're looking for. They're looking for a drama reality show miniseries called The White House, season 47. and for that to be a good show, you're going to need a lion, a witch, and a wardrobe. You're going to need a Trump, a Hillary Clinton, and a White House. You're going to need these crazy, insane stories we hear to keep us engaged. You're going to need someone like Breitbart. You're going to need someone like Steve Bannon to create rumor mills and rabbit holes that have all these amazing, eye-opening tidbits of information that make us addicted to Washington. If we don't hate Joe Biden, if we don't freak out because he's creepy Joe, we will not be inclined to vote for his opposition. So you now see why CNN is such a vital arm to help Trump. You work in tandem. This is the shepherd and his dog working together. And so when I look at any of these things that are happening around us, including the shooting in Minneapolis, what I see is more about we got to get all these sheep to move from here over to there. We'll just drop a firecracker right here and all of them will freak out and run over there. And that's more what I look at when I look at every election, when I look at every one of these psyops, when I look at COVID-19, just the ridiculous fraud in that. I see something that's outside the theater of this wrestling match that we call politics. And it's hard for me to even stay focused on the idea that elections are real, other than simply whether or not you vote means that you consent for the system itself. It doesn't really matter who you vote for. It's more about, did you vote? That means that you believe in this system that we have. It's a very backwards way to look at it, I admit, but that's where I'm at.
I could totally see that. That makes a lot of sense to me. It is theater. Politics has always been theater, but now it's amped up, and we've got a very experienced reality TV star right in there. And that's super fascinating. And it definitely is theater, and it definitely is a reality show. There's no doubt about it. We got all the characters, we got the villains, we got the creeps, we got the white hats, the good guys that are going to come in and save the day at some point in time, in the next 3,000 years or so. They'll probably show up. Maybe we'll have some aliens come in and save us.
Well, we have Epstein too. Look at Epstein. We have Epstein too. We have this prop. It's a literal chair. It's the giant ladder that you see a wrestler climb on top of and jump off of and land on, while the ref says nothing the entire time. You're allowed to bring a painter's ladder, an 8-foot tall painter's ladder, into the ring, and the ref doesn't stop you. Why? Because this isn't real. This isn't real. And so when you look at Epstein, you have to realize that it's not just Epstein. Look at his story. You've got an exotic, billionaire, pedophile, tropical island, submarine, Mossad agent, burning bridges. You've got an ambulance. You've got a plastic cow. You've got ties to Disney. You've got rumors of peeling faces off people. You have human trafficking. You have drugs. You have Stephen Hawking. You have all these celebrities visiting the island. You have this giant piece of
Who
fly.
was in that one? Who was in that one? It sounds good.
Exactly. Right? You have a giant strip of fly paper dipped in heroin, and the American people are flies. We're addict flies, and so no matter what comes out, we're assuming that it's real right from the bat. We're instantly believing, oh, it's got to be real, of course. And so that's why when I look at the photos of what happened in Minneapolis, and I see the crooked badge, and I see the perfect pose for the camera, I see all the same tricks are just dripping all over it. And the only thing that bothers me is that I look around to my brother and I'm like, are we ever going to catch along? Are we ever going to catch on? And that's thanks to the corona. There's less sunspots. People are seeing things more now. The wizardry
I agree. Yeah.
is effective. And so that's a good sign. That's why I've been saying this could be the best apocalypse ever if we pull it off.
You're right, and it's. I suspect that they're going to keep throwing this kind of stuff at us one after another. As soon as people start catching on, as they were doing with the whole COVID nonsense, that they immediately threw something else in there. A new plot twist. Instant plot twist. We've got to pivot here, and now we're going to go to inciting race wars. Now, the only thing that gets real is if you've
the most emotional of that's the key right there. People were thinking, and we had to switch it to deep emotion.
Yes, yes, yeah. Get back out of your head into just confused emotion, because that's a better place for the manipulators, the puppet masters, to handle your situation. Yeah, I agree. And the real part, though, the sad part is that there are people actually being hurt by this. There are businesses that are being burned down that really had nothing to do with it. Although, like you said, some of them were probably already going under, and maybe they're going to benefit from insurance if they had terrorist insurance. But I know that other businesses, some of them don't typically have terrorist coverage, and that is a separate insurance coverage these days. It's not included with your general liability insurance.
If you're a small company, yeah. But yeah. Think about it. If you're a big corporation,
for sure. Yeah, for sure you're going to have it. But, for most small businesses may or may not have it. So some of them are legitimately being hurt by all of this. And both scenarios, both the fake COVID stuff and now the fake race baiting.
Yeah.
So what's next? What are we going to see Bluebeam be reintroduced, and we're going to get some aliens showing up in the sky with?
They're already showing a peek of that whole card. They during this whole thing, and you're seeing that from the junior conspiracy group is what I'm just going to call them. The ones that have just now
the amateurs.
Yeah, they're like, oh, look how they did a bunch of releases during the COVID and during the riots, and they did UFO releases and stuff. Yeah, that's, you think that they don't realize we're all watching, that you don't think that they're just going to feed you what they want. That's absolutely, I mean, that was written right into Werner von Braun's plans, that the thing that was going to bring the world together as a whole was going to be alien invasion.
Yeah, even Reagan said it, right?
Yeah.
You bet. Who was an actor.
Yep. I'm telling you, the reptilian space pope is going to be awesome.
Yeah.
And, we're really looking forward to it. I'm looking forward to it coming down, and you can already know what it's going to look like, because you're going to want it to be shaped like a human, but with big kitten eyes, right? So it's innocent. And so you want it to look like a human, but not as strong. So you're going to want to take its muscles away. So you're going to want to make it a little bit shorter. You want it to look almost like a butler, You're not going to want it to have hair, because that'll be too messy. Yeah. You don't want it to have teeth. You don't need it to have a nose. You want it to recharge off photosynthesis. Like you want it to eat light, basically. You could put it in a closet, and charge it like a battery. And the whole thing, you need a big head, so it has an antenna, so you can control its mouth movements, so you can tell it what to say. And it'll come here and tell us how dirty we are because of our evil black carbon footprint. It'll tell us how racist we are, and it'll tell us how violent we are and how we can't be trusted because it is 10,000 million years more enlightened than we are. And so we should really just bow down and geld ourselves and understand that this guy knows what's best for all of us because he's the reptilian space pope.
Yeah, and maybe we could give him a blue tint, in honor of the blue chicken theory. Right?
Absolutely. And he will be all those things and be disarming and charming the entire time. So.
Oh, but that's the Antichrist, isn't it?
Yes. Yeah, that's another way of looking at it. Yeah.
Oh my God. I mean, we just have to laugh at this stuff because it's so completely absurd. It's just beyond, I don't even know. There's not even a word for me that I know of that really adequately describes this situation.
Surreal.
Yeah, it is.
It's real word for me.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, that's as close as we can get, I think.
I think we're looking at a real rapture. I'm not being sarcastic here. I really think that what's happening is a psychological rapture, and the people that are hiding behind masks are going to it's going to get worse for them. What I mean by that is that the stories are going to become more and more ridiculous for you to cling to. They're going to tell you that COVID rises.
COVID-2. Wave 2.
It rises in the air, so you need to crawl around, but like to stay below the virus because the virus is kind of like a fart, and it raises up higher. And so if you crawl around on all fours, you'll be okay.
Yeah.
It's going to get worse. People are going to be, if they want to keep believing propaganda, it's going to become more and more expensive. That's what's happening right now. It's becoming more and more expensive to accept 9/11. To accept JFK, to accept WMDs, babies in incubators, 19 box cutters, magic turning bullets, COVID-19, all of it. It's becoming more and more expensive, and that's what's causing more and more people to wake up. And so I think that's what you're looking at as a rapture. And some people aren't going to make it. The people that are going to insist that it's safe to stay in the city, that it's going to be the best idea to keep their children in schools. They don't need a garden. They can keep drinking Pepsi. Whatever. It's those people are not going to make the rapture. I really think that's what's coming. Those people are not going to make it, and they're going to have mega cities built for them. They're going to have basically massive welfare, just like what you're seeing in California now with the tent cities. It's going to be the bigger cities are going to have these little pockets that they're going to be as big as the people need them to be. It's not going to be forced on anyone. This is all going to be by consent. But I really think that that's what's coming next. And what you see that is the same as the Yellow Vest in Europe. It's the exact same program that's being installed. Are you going to tolerate it, or are you going to claim your sovereignty and say no? And that's what's happening all around the world right now.
That is the choice. Now, are you talking about a consciousness rapture? You're not talking about a literal, we all float to the heavens and through the sky.
So I'm so glad you asked. It is. See, here's the thing. Technically, it is a literal rapture because, I know this sounds crazy, guys, but because of virtual reality, because of what's coming, I'm telling you guys, what's coming is this really amazing virtual reality world. I do believe that actually the rapture will be more physical than we think, because this psychological rapture will take place inside of virtual reality. That will become a giant teat, a digital teat that people can suckle off of and stop seeing the world. I definitely do think that is part of the plan. Not only that, it's on the Economist cover of 2017. I'm not even reaching here. I know it sounds crazy, but I really think that is part of what's next.
So you're anticipating that, maybe fairly shortly, we're all going to get our chips in our heads, or many of us, or some people. Yeah, and then hook up to AI and live in that virtual reality, which they've already created avatars for all of us in that world, right?
Right. And it won't be all of us. This will all be consent driven. People will beg to get in there. They already are. People will beg for that. It'll trust me, they will beg for that. And no one will be forced in there at all. Same with vaccines, same with schools. None of us are going to force our kids to go back to school and adhere to the new vaccine rules or the new COVID rules or the new social distancing rules. This is all going to be our consent. We're going to choose to do it. And some communities are going to make it. They're going to fire the right people, and they're not going to have that. Other communities are not, right? We know that. And those communities we know typically are going to be in the larger cities, because larger cities tend to suckle on the teat of government more. That's why there's more democratic strongholds in the cities. And that's why I'm saying that you're going to see there what's happening in California is going to start happening in all these larger cities, but inside these pockets. And Minneapolis is showing you that right now. I predict Dallas will be another one. And LA, of course.
Chicago, probably. Yeah.
Yeah, of course. I think that's probably what will happen next on the ground. And that's where that VR thing will be all part of it. There's a lot to do here. There's a lot going on to the PSYOP, that's more than COVID-19. This is a big movement happening around us.
Hey, Ben, I kind of see this as spiritual school 201 test. How freaking bad does it have to get before you can see the game, right?
100%. That's the worst part is if you're going to reach the epitome of anything, if you're going to become the greatest weightlifter, we're going to have to throw the most weight at you. That's just a fact. If you want to become the greatest sailor, you're not going to get to sail in the glassy, smooth lakes with the nice, calm breeze. We're going to take you out there during the typhoon and see if you can make it. And when you're done, you're the best. And that's what we're literally here to do. And if people have a hard time, this is where people really get hung up, is understanding how grand this plan is. But it is not that grand. If we look at everything that we get comes straight from Hollywood. And any TV show that we watch, the very first season, if that show becomes popular, that's typically because that show was well written. It was either witty or clever, or the drama in it was very, a lot of very good character development. And that hooks people. And now we've got your attention. It doesn't take but 2 or 3 seasons before somebody's sister has to turn gay, and there's divorces and
somebody gets shot.
And you have to really start, in order to hold that attention. They start amping up the drama, and they start making it more and more ridiculous. And they always, and the bad, like you guys were explaining before, the bad guy has to get worse and more, just off the charts. I know everybody loved Game of Thrones. That was a fantastic show, went viral and everything. I don't know if most people realize that the gentleman who played Joffrey, who was this character that was just insane, and he had people hate him so much they were just seething and just foaming at the mouth to see this little boy die. And when he died, after he was done with the series, George R.R. Martin wrote him a personal thank you letter, because you can't have that kind of high drama without a horribly evil person to hate. And then when you have that horribly evil person to hate, and you get to that seething point where you want to strangle a young boy, like, you have now lost your morals. You're completely out of control with your emotions. Now we can throw in them hooks. We can, I didn't see that coming. Well, yeah, you didn't see it coming because you were so emotional. Your brain didn't work.
Exactly.
So all these things are any good movie, any good TV series, and anytime it starts drawing out, like we're getting with society, the society's getting older, and societies always are cyclical, and we're getting to the end portion of that society. When we look at Roman society, before it fell apart, it didn't care anything about its people. Everything was about the senators and the people in power, and there was rampant sex parties. Everybody was getting drunk and doing all kinds of drugs. There wasn't any kind of morality in any way, shape, or form. They brought on the Roman games got brought back, and they had to appease the people. You know, as long as we give them the bread and circus, we can do whatever we want.
Yeah.
And here
That's
we are.
exactly it. Yeah, it's exactly it. We've got Rome again with a little bit more technology, possibly. That's about it. Same game, same games.
Trick.
Yeah.
Yep.
Oh,
Well
that's
said.
awesome.
If it ain't broke, don't fix it.
Works every time.
Yeah, Washington D.C. isn't broken, guys. It was designed to work this way. It's like I said, it's a pillage. It's a 24/7 pillage, like a 7-Eleven. It's a pillage 11. It's a pillage 7-Eleven or whatever.
Oh yeah, well we see that, and you know, it's always been going on. You know, those of us who've been watching this for a long time, we know it's been going on for a long time. But the interesting thing is, it's coming out more and more and more, and this is actually a good thing. Like you were saying, James, this is a lot more people are seeing the game now because they're seeing how the politicians work it, where, you know, we're going to give this country some aid. Well, let's try with $1 billion. Well, guess what? 900 million of that is coming back into offshore accounts for politicians and, you know, CEOs of multinational corporations and everything else. That's how they game the system in all these different ways. Grants are another one. You know, they have control of the purse string, so they're just going to distribute those funds as they see fit, you know, to benefit themselves. And this is nothing new, but again, it's a little more transparent now, which is good because people need to see how bad they've been shafted for almost forever, probably.
Yeah, well, people know that. They already know how much they're being shafted. This really boils down to people not wanting to be their own government. And I'm not saying that you have to get rid of the entire government, but we could limit government. And all we have to do to limit government is take on that responsibility ourselves. Be our own militia, be in charge of our own airspace, be in charge of our own water quality, be our own EPA, be our own pedophile watch board, be our own corruption watch board. Stop sending people to D.C. and keep all that money here. Keep it local. Percolate government from the soil up instead of the top down. It's as soon as we regain faith in ourselves, Washington, D.C. dies. It dies by starvation. And that's why they're acting so crazy right now, because it's dangerous for them for a while.
Yep, that's where we got to get. Very good. I like it. Anyway, you're listening to Inside the Matrix with James True and Benjamin Balderson. We'll be right back. Stick around with us. All right, welcome back, everybody. And I'd like to remind everybody, if you want to pose a question for us, be sure and pop it in the chat, or you can even call in. So the number's on the homepage of kcorradio.com. In case you want to do that, we'll be happy to engage with you in that way. And so we were talking earlier about the reality show that we're seeing play out in front of us, which is very interesting. And so we're kind of wanting to speculate on what could possibly happen from here. What new plot twist characters could be brought in? You know, what new scenario could possibly be brought into the play? You know, to keep the people engaged, as you were saying, James, keep that dopamine rush coming in for everybody, to keep them fully focused on the game itself. So, what do you think?
Well, it would seem to me that Trump would just be reelected, and really wouldn't matter who's there. Beto O'Rourke was sort of like the last insert. They kind of inserted him like Obama, meaning that everyone started.
What about Booty Boy?
Him attention. Who's Booty Boy?
Buttigieg.
Buttigieg.
The Buttigieg guy, that mayor from is it Ohio, Indiana, or something?
The gay mayor, Buttigieg.
Yeah. I called him Booty Boy. That was my name for him.
Gotcha. Yeah, it's it shows you how little of my attention this even gets. You know, it does seem though that it would make sense that Trump would be president again. It's it's hard for me to imagine that being any other way unless he wasn't performing as expected, and he seems to be doing a pretty stellar job.
Well, I think that yeah, he's playing his role to the hilt. He's really doing it pretty well.
So
I think
his role.
I think there's so many possibilities though.
His base is galvanized at the very least. That's what counts. That
Yeah.
his base, his side of it's galvanized, and it doesn't matter that the other side's seething and foaming at the mouth. His side's galvanized, and at this point, he's the incumbent.
Yeah, but I can see a lot of room for changes because Biden is really elderly. He's obviously failing cognitively. He can barely put a sentence together, and even if he's reading it, he still has trouble with it. So I could see, if they do decide to pop somebody else in that role, to sort of take his place, he could, I think he did have some health issues before that they could bring out and possibly, have a little heart trouble, or I wouldn't wish that on anybody, but I'm just saying that they could fake that or bring it about. Oh, he's just not up to it now. He's having some physical issues. Of course, we all know he has mental issues, but the physical issues could be brought in, and then we could have Big Mike come in as a possible VP, and then instant proxy for Barry to be president again. Is that too far out for you?
I don't see how I don't see why Trump has to introduce a new dollar, and that's going to take. There's a lot of calories to burn to do that, like across the board, and so I can't see how anyone else would quote unquote win the next election. I think it would have to be Trump because it's mid pillage. You don't change your horses midstream, kind of thing. Mm-hmm. So to me, the next Democratic challenger would be someone that we haven't seen yet. It would be another insert, an up and comer, someone from the outside, someone who
like Carter or Clinton or Barry.
It's gonna have to be somebody loved, a JFK type figure.
Yeah.
Like
that. But again, it just feels like
he's going to bring us back together under the new dollar.
Hope and change is a good theme, don't you think?
I think change.
See how well that worked in 08, right?
Go change and hope this time.
Change and hope. Yeah. Hope and change that's the wrong order of.
Cool. Yeah.
Change and hope.
You need an organizer of community this time, not a community organizer. You need an organizer.
That's great. That's perfect. And, we know just how they can create these characters too, and introduce them to us slowly as as the sub-heroes, and they gradually rise through the ranks and to prominence, and lo and behold, wow, our next savior.
Of course. Yep.
Oh my gosh, I love it. Okay, so then we've got all right. I want to ask you guys, who's pulling the strings? There's we have all this talk about it's the central bankers, the world bankers, it's the Bilderbergs, it's the Committee of 300, it's the Fabian Society, it's the Club of Rome, it's the Trilateral Commission, it's the you name it. There's all these groups, the Masons, the Illuminati. Who's pulling the strings? Is it some people say it's the more obvious ones like Soros, Kissinger, Rothschild, Rockefeller. Do we even know? Do we have any idea? Because obviously this is coordinated from some point.
I think who pulls the strings is us. I think our evacuation pulls the strings. And what we see around us is a response to our fear of sovereignty. I don't think that Trump 10 years ago wanted to build a wall. Instead, what he saw is there's an evacuation of people. People are afraid of their own power, and it comes out in ways that I can manipulate to offer them something that will appease them. And I can offer them a wall. I'm under the impression that out of all the things that I could do in this food court of the mind, I'm going to offer a hot dog on a stick. And I'm going to give out free samples, and I'm going to say, we could build this wall, we can make America great again. And that, Trump wasn't telling us what to do. He was responding to our appetite. So to answer the question of who holds the strings, it's literally our fear of the reins is who's holding the strings. It's our own apprehension to what it's like to govern ourselves. And that's why we keep losing, because of how many calories it takes to be in charge of yourself, to run government on your own, like local government that you can look in the eye, right? Governments whose leader you see in the grocery store, whose leader you see dropping their kids off at the same school you go to. It's a different form of government. Right now, all of our attention is focused onto an obelisk called the Washington Monument. That obelisk isn't even in the country. It's not even in the country. That obelisk sits on private corporation land that's outside the United States.
The
and
district.
All the attention stares at that Washington Monument, stares at that obelisk, and gives it our worship. We worship that by giving it our consent, by saying we want more of this, we want more of this, please save us from the fires, save us from the virus, save us from the COVID, save us from the box cutters, save us from this, save us from that, save us from that. As soon as enough of us wake up and say, stop saving us, you're killing us, all this ends. It all ends the day that happens. And what I see happening is some of the people that are pulling the strings know that they can get us to wake up if they make it more uncomfortable.
That seems to be it, right? It's like it always boils down. How freaking bad does it have to be before you'll say no, before you'll say, I've had enough? And to your point, yes, this is all about self-responsibility and willing to be responsible for yourself and your life. And this even ties in to me with religion, because if government's not going to do it, then by golly, we've got a savior somewhere that's going to do it, right?
Right. Yep.
If you're trying to actually put a name to the group, because James is absolutely right. The need for power, that vacuum is what created the overall leader. If that vacuum or need was not there, then that leader would never have been able to arise. So that's absolutely right. But when you look at it and you're trying to look at somebody to point a finger at, when I was younger, I used to own this company called Pooper Scoopers. And I went around, and the rich people don't like picking up their dog poop. And it took me 10 minutes a yard, and I made about $20 a yard, and I could do 5 of them in an hour. It was great. So I went around and picked up rich people dog poop. And yeah. And yeah, it's not like I had to touch it. You just rake it into a little bucket and off you go. Take 10 minutes of work. So the richest people that I serviced had these 2 giant, gorgeous dogs. Looked like just biggest, hairiest dogs you ever saw. Their house did not have an address. They lived in the middle of the biggest city in South Dakota, and their house had no address, and you could not find it on a map. That was the richest house that I serviced. If you think that the guy that's all powerful and has all, is controlling everything, if you think for 1 second you're going to know his name, you're nuts. Even in the movies, they show that, where the guy, like the Godfather, that like the supreme Godfather, he's the dude like helping somebody in the restroom and spritzing their hand and handing them a mint after they pee. And you never knew it. Like it's never the front face. That guy is who they want you to see. Those people don't care. The ones who are truly powerful and truly have it going on, you'll never know who those people are.
Yeah, and that gets us into a whole other area too, because who's to say that they're actually people? The whole AI system, which has been around for a long time now, could definitely be calling the shots. Or we have our other entities, that are involved in this situation, in this play as well. So it's very interesting. But
that's where I get with it. is the other entities.
Yeah.
And if we want to touch on that, I can.
Yeah, let's go there.
Because since the late 1800s, we had John Dee and that entire pantheon of magicians, sorcerers, people of that nature, which of course all were in the Queen's court. You know, John Dee was a direct advisor to the Queen.
Right.
So they were setting all of this up. So where did all their information supposedly come from? The Enochian pantheon of etheric beings. So we've got a plan, no matter how you look at it, the Abrahamic order, whether you're going to choose the Muslims, the Jews, the Christians, the Baha'i, even the Mormons are actually a branch of Abrahamic. There's a million different sects of Abrahamic religion that have mostly overtaken the world. And step by step, they've followed this. And we look at the 1800s, these again were the Enochian. Enoch supposedly is basically the right hand of God. He was the voice of God, the perfect one. They call that specific choir of angels the Enochian angels, and they've laid this entire plan out, and we can see it marching by lockstep. And even the characters during that time period that were supposedly the anti, the opposition to what was going to be, where we're looking at the Crowley and the Elias Levi, guys like that. Well, Levi put out Baphomet. Baphomet is not at all, people immediately then say, oh, that's them pagan gods and the devil and blah. Well, in the pagan pantheons or the heathen pantheons, we didn't have unisexual beings like that were running around. You were either a masculine being or a feminine being. Now, as an alchemist, we're supposed to be taking and realizing that we each have a masculine side and a feminine side, just like every plant has salt and oil. But overall, the plant is either more salty or more oily. It's either masculine or feminine. It's not this perfect thing of both. And as an alchemist, you're supposed to be bringing it to the epitome of what it is, not bringing it to this blasé, middle ground that is nothing. So that's what's been pushed for the rest of us. Even the counterculture people. It was a very weird time, and right now this is what we're seeing in our society. Our society has been absolutely homogenized. You can't be a man, you can't be a woman. Neither of those things are good. You can't. Everything's got to just be blasé. There's no real brilliance in our society anymore. Anytime you look for something that was beautiful and brilliant, you look to old classical music, or you look to the Great Pyramids, or you look to anything that was ancient. Nothing that we produce today. Nothing. None of the music, as we're listening to Britney Spears and people like that, we've lost Mozart. Everything's just been completely homogenized, and that's what they've done to society. And then the royals had their own plan. And if people don't realize, every single president, whether they were supposedly Christian or not, and we hear all about it, every single one goes to the weeping wall and puts on the fancy little hat, and goes up and puts his face and pledges his allegiance. And every time, this is, and they've got their own, it's not even a Hegelian dialectic. Like I said, there's like 15 different sects. You can choose inside of one of the sects. Are you a Muslim who believes that the bloodline of the prophet passed, and that's where the power comes from, is the bloodline of the prophet? Or do you believe that it comes from divine choosing, and you have shown that through works and things like that. So now we've got Sufi Muslims, and even inside their own sects, they've got their own dialectics. But what we cannot have, and this is something that if you've never seen American Gods, that was beautiful. The speech when Mr. World was trying to convince Odin to come join the team. And he's talking about this very subject. And he says, it's okay if people want mild salsa. It's okay if they want chunky. It's okay if they want smooth. It's okay if they want hot. Just as long as they're getting the salsa from us.
Mm-hmm.
Straight out. And across the world, if I go check into the hospital, they're going to ask me if I'm one of the major religions, and every religion they're going to name is Abrahamic. So this is the playbook that we're following. This is part of why everybody's looking to Revelation right now, looking for the Antichrist, looking for all this. This is part of the desperation of the situation, because in that pantheon, there is a chosen people. The rest of us are goyim, and we are meant to serve that chosen people. And this is something that all kinds of people want to turn this all kinds of weird religious ways. But if you start studying theology, if you were not a son of Shem, like anti-Semitic actually means against the sons of Shem. If you are not a son of Shem, you do not get to be a chosen one. You are not a Hebrew. You are not one of us. You're not even a human. You're a cattle. And we need to all understand that there is a group of people and who thinks this. They've written it down in a book.
Protocols of the Learned Elders of Zion, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And even in the Old Testament that they hand everybody, it says flat out that Adam and Eve were the only people on earth. Then they had two sons, Cain and Abel. Cain killed Abel and was banished from the garden, and then comes back with a fully grown adult wife who apparently had parents. Where the hell did they come from? Where the hell did she come from? Oh, there's an entire civilization outside there? Weird.
Oh, yeah. There's so much we don't know. And then you can go down and look at Tartaria and that whole thing.
But look at the words that they use, Jimmy. They were the first humans. They didn't deny these other people exist. They deny that they're human. They're not a God's chosen person. They're saying it right there for you. I'm not being racist. I'm not being weird. I'm reading their book and saying, hold on. This is what you're saying. So all the rest of us are not the chosen people. We're the cattle. And as like when I was young, it was a good Christian to eat meat and go out and use animals how you be real rough on animals. That was almost every Christian I ever knew. It was only weird hippies that were friends with animals and stuff. This is how they show that they're going to do animals. Just like if you walk over to somebody's house and you see him kicking the shit out of his dog because his dog did something trivial, didn't bite the neighbor, but you walk in and he stepped in the house and had mud on his paw, and the dude just starts beating the hell out of him. That's not a good guy. You should maybe take that as a sign and understand that when that man thinks that he is better than you, because that's what most people do. They put you on a level, and they're either subservient or they're above somebody. And when you do something that displeases them, just like that dog, they're going to give you that same treatment.
Absolutely. And we've got, of course, moving the American embassy to Jerusalem kind of fits right in with that as well.
Absolutely. And then we turn around and they're now, as James and I talked about, it didn't happen this year, but time doesn't really have any meaning. They're going to build up to this until it's exactly right. And they understand what signifiers that they are looking for. We're just taking shots in the dark at what things their playbook. We didn't get a peek at their playbook. And when the timing's right, they're going to sacrifice the lamb on the Temple Mount. And then Revelation is going to kick off. That's the way. This is something that they've done on purpose. Just like the Balfour Agreement was signed years before World War II ever started.
Right, like 1918, I believe.
Yeah. The Crown said, we're going to go ahead and get you back the Holy Land. Then you turn around and you read their book, and their book stated that in order for the return of the Holy Land to happen, 6 million Jews needed to be sacrificed as wheat before the chaff, so that way the good Jews could have the Holy Land back. Now, whether anybody believes any of this nonsense, which I obviously don't, they do, and they're acting accordingly.
Mm-hmm. It's fascinating. All right, guys, we're coming up against the break once again. Time is flying by. You're listening to Inside the Matrix with our special guests, James True and Benjamin Balderson. We're going to take a short pause. I see we have a question in the chat we're going to take up when we get back. So stick around with us. All right. Welcome back once again, everybody, to Inside the Matrix. This is our final segment. And we've got a comment from Echo. Echo says, all them religions are Arab religions for Arabs. It all comes from the Middle East, and it's the cause of all wars. Why are Americans praying to Arab gods? Don't make any sense other than it's just another pyramid con job. That's an interesting comment.
I absolutely agree. It's real common knowledge that Israel is in northern Africa. So this is why it's always been confusing to me why we claim as a people, and when you watch any kind of liberal news, that white Christianity has taken over the world. It all came from England. It all came from Europe. It's all from white people. And I'm going, well, I'm a Germanic person myself, and my people worshipped Odin. We followed Odin, not worshipped, because worship's just the entire wrong word, but we followed Odin. We didn't follow. It wasn't until Rome came and forced their converted, because they didn't even start out Christian. They converted to Christianity and then moved up and through the Gallic Wars, and then they started into Europe with the Gallic Wars and then expanded out. This is something that was forced onto our people, and actually people like Harold Bluetooth, who a lot of people immediately he's some kind of hero because he unified Norway and all this. No, those were the guys that sold out to the Christians. They unified it under Christianity. They were the first ones to say, we will sell our tribal people out if you bring us soldiers and make me in charge. And
kind of like today.
Right. So this same thing happened in Europe only 1,000 years ago, and then we were force converted. Guys like St. Patrick drove the snakes out of Ireland. There was never a snake that crawls on its belly in Ireland. What he did was drive the pagans and converted everybody into Christianity by death. If you didn't convert, you died. And this is something that took a very long time. So it's very interesting to me that that entire thing, and it's not like that isn't open. People just somehow forgot it. So this is an African religion that's completely taken over the entire world, and it's something I don't understand at all. We used to each have our own regional religions, and they were all based off of nature. And I've studied theology my entire life. I can draw direct parallels through most of these cosmologies. These were just a study of how the universe works. I don't understand why all had to turn into one thing, but as I said before, this is what we're under. The entire world is blanketed under different versions of Abrahamic. Yeah,
and these the Christian religion coming from the Holy Land in the Middle East. And then we've got all of these really Middle Eastern sounding names like Matthew, Mark, Luke, John, James, Paul, right? Coming straight from the Middle East.
Which again, it's a known fact that every president relates back to the kings of England. Every king of England relates back to Saudi Arabia. That's because the kings of England were implanted there. That wasn't our original kings. We didn't even have kings. We were a tribal people, and they put those kings there. That's their people. And then we had, everybody knows, King James rewrote the entire Bible in 1500. And before that, it was written in Latin, and your common person couldn't even read it. So was these names that we're reading in English today, were these names that even existed in Latin? Did Latin people even say the word Mark?
Yeah, it just shows you the manipulation. It's never ending.
Well, the original books actually didn't even have names. They were attributed to Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, much like they were building on top of the backs of the original astrotheology underneath it, which is the concept of the four directions, the four seasons.
And the sky clock.
Solstice, exactly, yeah. And so they wanted to create a human avatar to relate to that, because a human avatar, instead of just a cross, has more emotional appeal. It lights up the brain more. And so all this was built on the back of paganism. In fact, Christianity and Judaism themselves, you could say, were birthed out of a primordial soup of paganism. You know, the 7 days of our week, the farmers' charms, all of our systems with almanacs and the seasons, of course, the birthdays of Mithras, Jesus, all of them are actually just, solstice points, marking the sun. So it's interesting that Christianity requires paganism for its foundation. So does Islam. Both of them, so does Judaism. All three of those are the fleur-de-lis, the three heads from the same neck, the same God, even the same God name. And that really is monarchy, is when you took a pantheism, a religion where everyone had their own cosmology. Monarchy is when people came in and said, no, there's only one right answer. And that's what I call the quickening. It's like that movie Highlander, where there could be only one. There was a time when there wasn't a game of there can be only one. And in that time, people had reverence for their ancestors. It was a belief system built on their ancestors. Where did they come from? They came from their ancestors. And so their homage and their reverence and their worship went to that. It went to their local mound. It went to their soil. It went to where it should go again, to our local area. The land we touch, the land we live on is our ancestor. It is the true connection there. And neither of these religions contradict each other. They don't. It's only when you have a Zionistic aspect to it, a concept that everyone is a sinner, everyone is broken, everyone is condemned to hell. Again, these are just minor fractions within Christianity, really. They're just, sometimes they get popular. It's this idea of germ theory, that your soul is corrupt and evil unless you accept this vaccine called Zionism. And that's certainly not all of Christianity, but Zionism is definitely profited immensely inside of both Islam and Christianity. Both of them, it's profited in both of them, and you're seeing that now. Why? Half the world is mutilating the boys, and calling the other half the world cruel for mutilating the girls.
Exactly.
That's exactly what's happening right now. And both sides are pointing to the other, going, "Your genital mutilations are cruel. Ours are spiritual." Yeah. That shows you how broken we are mentally, how much it breaks us to believe that everyone has to have the same aperture. Everyone has to have the same monarchy, the same God. It has to be this one God. And if you worship anyone else besides him, you're wrong. Not only are you wrong, but I'm going to have to come crusade you now. Right?
Yes. And it's also what shows you it's the masculine and feminine components of the same thing. Because one side is attacking the masculine root, and the other side is attacking the feminine root. It's nobody's going, oh, well, we should cut your nose off when you're born because somehow that makes fucking sense. No, nobody's saying that. It's always that one specific spot. It's two sides to the same coin.
Yeah. Well said. Yeah,
Absolutely
so
true.
attack. We've been reduced from 9 chakras to 7. It has been. Sometimes we'll explain. There's a root and there's a tip, a top of us too, and both of those have been severed through this kind of thinking. This materialism is what it is. You know, the Bible is one of the few books that said magic is not in the world. The Bible is one of the few books that said that man himself is not capable of any kind of supernatural life or energy. It's all from a source that is supernatural, that's not man. It's if you were to look at it, there's a rubber glove, insulated rubber gloves have been placed on the power of man, and he's been shorted from the ground. He's unable to pull current from the ground because he has rubber gloves and rubber shoes on. He's right. Immaculate now inside this materialism, and we're afraid of that power. We're afraid of the concept of a living cross. And truly, that's where we become an antenna of meat and bone. This is what Tesla was talking about. This is what the Gospel of Thomas was talking about. You know, the very book that was kept out of the Bible as an apocrypha. The scripture's still there, guys. It's from the same guys. It's from Jesus. It's talking with Jesus about this. And Jesus is telling you what the living cross is. But the church back then couldn't have that. So they put it in the apocrypha. They took it out. And now we have the struggle. You know, is the Bible a relic? Or is Jesus the relic? And that's where we're losing ourselves, because we're insisting it's a book. We're insisting that Jesus was wandering around with a Bible already. And he was the one that read the Bible and then said, I'm going to do what this says. People don't realize that the Bible came after. So, you know.
But even the story of Jesus, you know, the Immaculate Conception, the dying on the cross, resurrecting from the dead, that goes back to, I don't know, how many different religions that are ancient, that same exact story.
Yep. That resurrection story goes back to Osiris, it goes back to Mithras, it goes back to Jesus, and much further, Odin. And you know, Ben will tell you all about that and how it actually wasn't meant to be a sacrifice in the same way of this gruesome crucifixion or hanging. You know, it's a whole other system that was corrupted by Zionism.
Well, I've got a question here. Oh, go ahead, Ben.
The one other story that exists in Abrahamic that does not exist in anywhere else that goes with what you gentlemen are saying is the Tower of Babel. No, in no other cosmologies except for Abrahamic does this Tower of Babel story exist, where everybody felt this need to move into one city and create one tower, and everybody spoke the same language, and that's when things were really good. And that thing threatened God himself, so he had to throw everybody apart. Otherwise, that's how they were going to live, is in this giant civilization. Other cosmologies typically were more tribal.
So we've got a question on Skype here. Jerry's asking, what do you guys think about Trump labeling Antifa a terrorist organization? I mean, won't they take a page out of the Middle East playbook and just call them something else, but with the same purpose?
I think anytime that they label anything terrorist at this point is, I mean, Antifa, yes, they're horribly annoying. Horribly. We all have seen the pictures from Portland where obviously the ultra conservatives show up and the Antifa shows up, and then they all kind of stand out in the street and chuck stuff at each other. Now, did they blow up the trade tower, the Twin Towers? This is what the war on terrorism started with, was supposedly 3 towers falling and exploding, but 2 planes hitting them, and a bunch of other targets getting attacked. Did they have giant bombs? Do they have actual troops that are jumping out of armored carriers? This is a bunch of dumbasses. And to label them terrorists gives them so much more credence than what they should ever have. But what it truly does is just keeps propagating that we're going to have a war on terrorism, and that war is never going to end until terrorism ends. Terrorism is not a noun. We're going to have, you can't take it out. You can't run up the block. Terrorism lives at 1515 Clark Street.
Right, it's a concept.
Right. Just like right now, the one that they've just thrown in, where we're going to have a war on viruses that we can't see. Now forever, we get to keep having this war on viruses because we're never going to see them. They're never going to run up with a vial and say, we caught all the COVIDs. You guys are good.
Right. Just like they can bring up new terrorists all the time, they're going to continually bring up new viruses and new germs and terrible things that we all should be afraid of so that our good old government can take care of us forever.
So now that we've gotten rid of that, we can just start labeling other things terrorists. Oh, these guys are terrorists. Terrorism is still a problem. We can't let go of the Patriot Act. We can't give back any of the rights that we took away from everybody. We can't stop spying on our own public illegally because we need to for your safety because of terrorism. So there must always be terrorists.
Oh, yeah. And then when the aliens show up, that's when the real terrorists show up, right?
Werner von Braun.
We've got 30 trillion viruses in the human body. So
take your pick.
If we're gonna say one of them is the most dangerous thing in the world, what's going to stop us from saying 229 trillion more? This is a war. A war on virus is a war on humanity. COVID is a humanity. That's what it is. It's humanity exosome. To fight that is to literally have a war on humanity, and that's the truth of it. But that's been medicine for a long time, hasn't it?
Yep.
Amazing how
we got a war on carbon too.
Yep. War on terror, war on carbon, war on white people, war on penises, war on everything.
All my favorite things.
And this is all taking place in our minds. You know, I mean, it becomes physical at some point too, but this is really a battle for the terrain and the control of our minds. So
they never forced it on us. Yep, they've never.
Yeah. So we have the choice. We have the choice, as you were saying earlier, guys. We have the choice of self-responsibility, being the captain of our own ship, or we can take the pre-digested, spoon-fed rhetoric and stories that are being offered to us by a whole plethora of control systems, from religion to politics to higher education to you name it. I mean, we have the choice. We can eat that, eat those words up and incorporate them into our consciousness as being real, or we can take responsibility for ourselves and understand who we are as spiritual beings and be the captain of our own ship. So who's going to run our ship? Is it going to be you, or is it going to be somebody else or somebody else's game?
And what James means by gifts of Baal is, if that choice was going to be an easy one where it was, they set me up and they made this perfect life for me and they're going to take care of me perfectly, we would all choose that choice. Every one of us. So we need to not make that option. That's what he means by gift of Baal. He means that they've made this choice so horrible. You've almost got to be foolish to say, I can't take care of myself. These idiots who are just a dumpster fire obviously can do it better. When you have come to that choice, that's your gift of Baal. That's your choice. Oh God, I can't take the dumpster fire. If you can, there's no helping you then. There's
really no helping you then. Seriously, if you really think that your kids are going to be better off with 72 aluminum injections, right? Put in a plastic gerbil ball so you can go to school and never have recess and always have the same teacher. I don't know if you're really equipped for this world. Like seriously, I don't know why there's a profit in having you help America. Like I don't know if that's a, we're getting into idiocracy territory here, where we're gator for the crops kind of thing.
Yeah, that's it. And the choice becomes so horrendous, as you say, that if you actually choose that, well, then that's exactly what you deserve. It's about personal responsibility. And if you don't want to be the captain of your ship, there's plenty of people who would like to take your ship and use it for their own purposes.
Yep, exactly.
You bet. It's we can either both ride a bicycle and get down the street, or you can ride on the back of my 2-seated bike, only it's not 2-seated and there's not a seat, so you're just going to get that pipe right up the rear. But if you want to ride it, jump on, buddy.
Yeah, and it's not going to go where you want to go. It's going to go where the bike driver is going to go, right?
Exactly. But if you're good with those terms, then hop right on.
Oh my, yeah, it's just mind-boggling. It's just mind-boggling. So the only question now is to see what new absurdities they throw at us. It's like, okay, let's sling this out there and see how many are going to bite on this one, right?
Well, and it just goes with even science, where you start reading things like Uranus, the gases expelled from Uranus smell like rotten eggs. Oh, come on. Come on. While the COVID virus is going on, a comet passed by the world and it was wearing a mask. Come on. Man, I quit watching cheesy science sci-fi when I was like 19.
Yeah.
It rains diamonds on Neptune.
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
sure. Yeah.
Did you know Pluto actually has a silhouette of the dog Pluto inside?
Yeah, that was interesting, wasn't it?
Yes. I mean, literally, if you believed in a dual god system, it's them two guys from Mystery Science Theater 3000, and they're talking about us.
Yeah.
Like, can you believe those guys bought that? Uranus smells like farts. That is some cheesy comedy. That is Mel Brooks would have been like, nah, that's too easy. Don't do it.
Well, then we got Fake X out there too. These guys just crack me up. I mean, NASA was so pathetic and so incredibly easy to call out for their fakery, and too many people were doing it. So they kind of passed the baton to Fake X, out there now, and they did something miraculous. They loaded 2 astronauts and put them out into the fake space station. So, and rocketry, didn't you know that is the most advanced state-of-the-art way of getting around these days, just like, 100 years ago or so.
Yeah, if you think Elon Musk isn't a TV character, I don't know what to say to you.
Exactly. Yeah, and it's hilarious when his little rockets land perfectly, just the way they took off. The video always goes out just before it lands. So you don't see it actually land. You see it before and then after. Oh, look at that. It landed perfectly upright. Isn't that amazing? What a technology they have.
But guys, his car is orbiting Earth right now. And I saw him drive it up on the launch platform, which means that there's still Earth tires. There's still all the pressurized systems still there. Yet somehow, if you look at it in space, everything's fine. The tires haven't exploded. The gas tank, not the gas tank, but the capacitors inside the electric tank haven't. Everything's fine. So,
and the gas tank itself. What happens to gas out in a vacuum?
It's electric car, but still, it's the point is that we saw him drive that car up onto the launch pad. It made a spectacle out of it, and. This is all, like I said, it's going to get ridiculous. It's going to get harder and harder and harder for people to believe it.
Yeah.
And that's good.
Yeah. That's good. We're going to leave it right there, guys. Thank you so much. And this is why I love you guys so much, because you bring it every time. And I so appreciate you guys. Anyway, you've been listening to Inside the Matrix. Everybody stay well out there, stay safe, and keep your wits about you. Be sovereign, be who you are, and we love you all. Until next week, we'll see you then. Take care.
This is Inside the Matrix, hosted by Jimmy Brent.
Who are we talking about?
Jimmy Brent. Live every Sunday, 3 p.m. Pacific, 6 p.m. Eastern. Exclusively on the KCOR Digital Radio Network.
It is worldwide.
Broadcasting from an undisclosed location deep within the neon capital of the world, Las Vegas, Nevada. For more information on the host and the show, please visit InsideTheMatrix.org. That's InsideTheMatrix.org. It's time to break the chains of manipulated consciousness and claim our true nature as creative, divine beings. Inside the Matrix. Inside the Matrix.
This is KCOR Las Vegas, home of the Digital Radio Network, broadcasting from a shack just south of Area 51.
Wait, that doesn't exist.
This is the KCOR Digital Radio Network. Now for the news.